I am going to be critiquing this piece today, but I will start off with some announcements. First announcement, very important announcement, is Istebrak. Where do I get my stuff critiqued? Oh, I'll tell you. Go to istebrak.com and click on the Reddit icon right here. It'll take you to our Reddit. And you can share all kinds of work on Reddit. You can share your sketches, your 14-day challenges if you dare to embark on one. You can share your illustrations and your submissions for community challenges. You can do all kinds of stuff on Reddit. So go to istebrak.com and click on the Reddit icon here. And Portrait Studio is currently on sale. And then we have the community challenge. The upcoming community challenge is not posted yet, but it'll be based off the narratives you guys submitted. They've already been submitted and read through. The winner of that, I will talk about it more in detail, but just as a quick, just so that the suspense is gone. The winner is the one who wrote the story about a girl whose brother has to bullfight without, he has to go into a stadium and he has to fight a bull. So I think that has a lot of potential for cinematic framing, for creating a really, really interesting tunnel walkway into the stadium, and then the bull and the gesture of the bull, as well as the colors of the red that he describes. I think all of that has a lot of potential for fun. Just the red alone, I can't wait to see how you guys play with the red on the sand of the Colosseum. It's going to be so cool. I'm already seeing the submissions in my mind. But that's the one that I picked. When I'm going to start, I don't know. But that's the narrative that I picked. You can spread it around. And I will make an official post on it very soon and go into more detail probably on Thursday about it. But yes, yeah, Abu has been working on landscaping a lot as well on top. So we've had a lot of outdoor projects because of our house. We basically bought a pile of sticks on a hill. And so that's my dream. My dream is that we build a house from the ground up, and or just buy a house and flip it, not to flip it to sell it, but that was our dream. So that's almost done, and that's why we've had such a big massive delay on the next Portrait Studio update. But again, I promise you guys it will come out. Control Z is definitely on our radar, and we've heard all of your complaints, and we log everything. So I say the fight was fixed, someone paid off the bull. Yeah. And then we have a Portrait Studio sale that I did that. Okay. So an important announcement that I really want to get out there is joining on Patreon. So what I want to do is create a community that is long lasting, where you have a pledge that doesn't require a lot from you financially and a lot from you just having to show up and do homework like you have with the other tiers. So having an army of people joining as $1 is actually a lot more beneficial for the community than having $5, $20, that might fluctuate, that might leave. So it is very, very important for anyone who's ever been critiqued, you want to give back. That's just $12 a year for keeping this community alive. It's not a very big price tag. One month of $12 is like a Netflix subscription or a Disney Plus subscription. So $12 a year, and I give out 2 1-hour streams a week. And constant free education, constant feedback, running the community, hosting all those community challenges, extending the community into its Instagram, which is a lot of work. All those daily sketch challenges, just monitoring and keeping the community alive is a lot of work. And I'd appreciate any support you guys give back. Again, it's just $1. And that if you've used Patreon before, it's actually very easy to sign up. I'll try to get into more of what it is that we do here if you're new to my community. But if we have like 1,000 active artists on my YouTube channel between YouTube and Instagram, I think we could pull together and get 1,000 $1 patrons to come in. I understand if you guys don't like Patreon, there's a lot of opinions about using a third party, stuff like that. But I use it. I've used it for many years, and I appreciate every single person who's come in and joined. but writes a check for $1 million. But yeah, a lot of these pro bono communities online are only run really by the community itself. So I have this, and I've been told by a lot of people that my index of art classes is invaluable. And a lot of people always ask how to give back, how to support. Unfortunately, for some reason, YouTube has completely stunned my channel. I'm not sure why, but they have put it to a standstill. I barely send out any notifications. I've tried everything. I'm not sure why it's happening. I'm not sure if it's because I stream through YouTube. I'm not sure if it's because my videos are very long. I was doing fine before I hit 100K. After I hit 100K, for some reason, my subscribers aren't getting notifications. So the channel is definitely suffering for it. I really appreciate you guys sending out support in any way you can. And there's a definite way, a real concrete way. It's just $1 a month. It goes directly to my channel. So thank you so much to everyone who's responded to the call. And for those who are on the fence, you may think, oh, somebody else will respond. And, you know, I don't have to do it and it's just $1. But that little thought is exactly the obstacle. That's the reason why people don't respond to a lot of calls for support, is that, you know, when you're on the fence, another guy's on the fence, and another guy's on the fence, and they're all going to decide somebody else is going to do it. Somebody else will support, and I don't have to, and it's just $1. But that's the point, is that we need everybody on board for this to work. And I don't want to ask too much from anyone, especially in this financial climate. So if you guys can, send support my way in the form of $1, and kind of team together and band together, because this community is under a lot of pressure, and it's really difficult to keep it all up, considering how much I'm getting back from it, and how much daily hours are going into running it. It's starting to get a bit scary, considering I'm getting only 200 views a video, which is terrifying compared to the 5,000, 16,000 I used to get. It's terrifying me. That's basically why I'm trying to get everybody on board through Patreon. And that's it. That's it for announcements. Let's get into the critique today. Okay. So this piece, I've been looking at it for a while. I never really had time to look at it. What happens in this piece here is that we are looking at a high horizon line, a very tall looking figure with very small rocks around her. I'm not sure if anybody else is reading the same thing. I'm pretty sure you guys are. If anyone else is feeling like she's a giant, this is why. So let me tell you something, two big facts I want to cover. When you shrink a character's head, so let's say you shrunk a character's head. So before I get into show joints, so before I get into the horizon line, let's just shrink her head a little bit. So when I shrink her head, she reads as a strong woman, right? Let me hide the joints, in fact. All right, right? She reads as a very tall lady, because what happens is your body grows around the head, meaning the head doesn't just keep growing forever. And when I increase the size of the head, so let me increase it, looks a little bit infantile, right? Looks a little bit like a short woman, fit but short. Have you ever seen those women? Kind of look like their head is gigantic just because they're like 4'9" or something like that. So the head is what you use to create render the feeling or get a read for a giant or a short person. So what happens here is that the head you have is minuscule compared to, let's say, just like the femur or just the torso. The head is tiny. And this could have happened for a lot of reasons. You could have done this because the canvas was getting dangerously close and you had a little bit of in-canvas anxiety and you started shrinking the size of the head because you weren't going to go in there and do surgery on the entire painting. You were just going to shrink the size of the head and have like a medium feel to all the scale. But your image of medium feel is, when we look at it, we just see disproportionate. So that could have been all of that. You could have had a bigger canvas and you just think that small heads are proportionate. But I have a feeling that it's because of the edge of the canvas. You guys are way more afraid of it than you think. The second thing, that was the first problem. The second problem, or the second reason why she feels like a Gigantosaurus Rex, is because the horizon is huge. When you have a big character, what do? So let's say you are a character that is her size, and you're standing shoulder to shoulder with her. So right around here, shoulder to shoulder with her. She's standing in front of us. Or she's our height, standing not directly in front of us, but in our line of vision, but me and her are the same distance away from the ground. So you see where the horizon line is? If I'm shorter than her, what happens to the horizon line? Can anybody say? It's pretty obvious. But what's happening to the horizon line? Let's say we get really small, and we you know, at this point we're probably underground. That's why the shape came in front. All right, let's say we're taller than her. Okay, so there's two ways. The reason why she looks gigantic in her environment is because of the height of the horizon line. Not because she looks bigger, because we're shorter than her. By the way, like 5-6 years ago, this was my dream, having a 3D model while teaching. Like, this is absolutely phenomenal and kind of surreal. I used to dream about having a model to teach you guys with. Now that I do, it's just weird. It's just really weird. But it's awesome. Yeah, so she feels gigantic. So this is a tool we use let me see if I can find the joint. No, never mind. You know, this is a tool we use when we're trying to create a feeling of like a you know, a giant kind of walking in front of us and scaring the living crap out of us. And we're just really close, and he's so much taller than we are, etc. So this character looks huge, and if I were to increase the field of view, they'd look even bigger. Right? So she looks gigantic right now. So this is one way that by even getting rid of the horizon, like we don't even have to see the horizon line. We're so short in this worm's eye view, we don't even see the horizon. The reason why she looks bigger in the right, never mind, I'll just do it manually. In the painting is because we have, so let me decrease the field of view because you have none in your painting. We have leveled the camera with her, and her being so high up has raised the horizon line with her. So right now the camera is like a helicopter flying around. Do you see what I'm saying? So this is actually extremely unrealistic where the horizon line is. Extremely unrealistic. And so those are the two big mistakes you made. As for everything else, the rocks, the small little shapes here and there, everything is, you know, you have trees there, but they're not really creating an impact in the composition. They're not guiding the line of, you know, it's not good photography. It's just like Legos. You just had little paper sculptures you put up on a flat table, took the picture in the wrong angle, and drew really incorrect, disproportionate proportions. So I'm going to be fixing all of those. Any questions at all? I'm sorry, I don't know how that happened. Is field of view the same as zooming in and out? Field of view is how close the camera and how small the lens is. I'm not sure how to describe it, but it's about the scope of things, how far away objects are from the lens, I guess we could say. So Valentina, this is your painting. You're very welcome. So I'm going to be applying all this. The third sin you committed, Valentina, now that I know where you are, I'm going to say your name, which is terrifying, but I've been told that when I say the student's name, it terrifies them. Valentina, walk up to the front of the class, please. What the heck is this? This is neither a vertical canvas nor a horizontal canvas. It's neither a movie nor a portrait. I've never seen a book in the shape of a square that isn't a children's children's book. So what media are you serving? I've never seen a monitor that's square, God forbid, unless it's some kind of AutoCAD freak monitor or something. We don't need these little square tile canvases. They're useless. They're useless for the cinematics. They're useless for The phone, they're useless for apps, for games. They're nothing. They offer no help. So there's different things you can do. If it's a book cover, crop it this way. How do you see your image being used? Is it a book cover? Or is it, a book cover would be even thinner than that. Or is it a cinematic landscape? You seem to have a lot of landscape here. So I'm gonna honor your decision. Actually, you can just click on crop and go to 16:9 and it'll tell you how you can crop it. So I'm gonna crop it at 16:9 and see how much information we're missing everywhere to get that complete cinematic feel. Put it back on that. So I'm not gonna go completely 16:9. I'm just gonna add a little bit more space on either side and go from there. So along with lowering the horizon line, I'm going to fix the proportions and just get started now. So let's lasso a little bit. So when you're the kind of person who just watches movies blankly, I really don't know what kind of person you have to be to just watch a movie, as an artist, I mean. So what kind of artist you are, what kind of thinker you are. Watching a movie passively without observing the cinema in front of you. How, as an artist, are you, I'm not talking to any specific person, like not Valentina or anything, I'm talking to all of you. You're all here as equals, all right? So I ask you, my beautiful little noobs, what is it that compels you guys to watch movies and just not take any notes, mental notes about what you're seeing happening in front of you? How? How is that possible, first of all? And second of all, how dare you? How dare you watch movies without, like, first of all, observing that it's a horizontal canvas? How dare you? Greta Thunberg, how dare you? And just, you know, make these decisions in your paintings that make absolutely no sense. All right. So I'm just carefully lassoing, because I don't trust lasso right now. It'll just do a collective lasso and destroy everything. So I'm just going to manually do it. Bear with me while I use the lasso of truth. All right. So really, you know, if you're an artist and you watch media happening in front of you and you're not taking a record of it, you're not making a record of everything you're seeing, it's almost as if you know, the visuals were never important to you in art. How's that possible? Of course the visuals were important to you. You're an artist. So what is it that you know, that compels you guys to ignore these cinematic cues, these important things happening in front of you in the movie? So original ratio. Original. No. Oh, of course. It's just ratio, right? No. Oh, what did I do? Oh, stupid. No. Alright. So what I'm going to do next is just correct that horizon. So this is a bit of an environment assignment, environment critique as well. I'm going to bring that horizon line all the way down here. Just a nice God-fearing horizon line. Nothing too extreme. That looks like she's just of average size. She does not look like a gigantic Amazonian, you know, giant from Norse mythology or anything like that. She just looks like a normal person standing and having normal people problems. So I might have to do a double delete. Okay, so there in the opposite of that is true. You can, now you know what to do if you're trying to create the feeling like there's a character is huge. You could give them, you know, bird's eye view where the horizon line is gigantic. So let me give you a quick demonstration of that. So let's say the camera is right over her shoulder. and she's looking down at everyone. And the angle is like this. Like, you don't even see the horizon line anymore. Do you see that? We don't even see the horizon line. It's so high in the canvas. Do you see that? But let's say you had to show it and it was like a curved earth horizon line. This is what you would see. You would see more of the character's upper body, less of the lower body. And if it's really above them, then yeah, so it's bird's eye view. Technically, she's the bird, but just her head, because we don't see with the rest of our body. It's just the head. And then, of course, there's the more basic one, or the most, you know, go-to one, which is just keeping the camera low, which I showed you at the start, which is worm's eye view. Both bird's eye view and worm's eye view make the character in question, or the world around them, feel big. They can both be used to make a character feel big or a character feel small. There isn't one way to do it. Like if you had a smaller character, so the way you guys think, my beautiful noobs, is you think just by bringing in a basic shape like this and placing it on the stage and shrinking it, oops, okay, then you, by comparison, by just scale comparison, you guys are creating the feeling that she's bigger. But a good photographer wouldn't do that. They would use all kinds of little tricks to make a character feel big. So remember, this is just to reiterate the lesson. So let's say there was a small character, and I'm just going to reposition the camera. And this small character is right in front of the camera. Right? And the field of view is huge. Right? And this giant is just taking a big step, and she's looking, you know, down at the character. So it's kind of like a, you know, like a Godzilla moment. You know, you would take the picture to make this character feel huge. You would take the picture from behind the cube. But the way you guys think is you guys just do stuff like this, where you have one object beside the other to make them feel. So when it comes to scale, you guys aren't thinking about the camera, about movie making. Again, watch movies, watch good movies, and see how they pull this stuff off. Scale is a big thing to not, you know, to mess with and not understand what you're doing. You can make all kinds of mistakes with scale that are just not easy to correct. It's a big thing to mess with, because it most of the time means you have to repaint, because not understanding scale means you chose wrong perspective on your character. So if you were, obviously this is not pertaining to this painting, if you were intending on making a character feel big, you know, there are ways to go around it that you have to decide early on in your journey, in your painting process, so that you could decide the best perspective, the best scale, the best proportions, and find the best references. So if that word scale isn't in your vocabulary, if that's not something you're thinking about, that's not something that keeps you up at night, you're not ready for illustrations. You're just, you know, focus on your studies and maybe learn the general terminology, the general language of illustration making, but don't try it yet until you understand all that terminology. So it's not that the scale mistakes made here were so big you're just banished from illustrations altogether. It's that there were accidental scale mistakes. You just never knew where to put the horizon line, because it wasn't something you ever had to mess with or have to, you know, think about. So obviously you're just going to put it where you saw it last. Where you saw it last could have been a drawing from a children's book, which has no mind to any perspective or proportions. But obviously you want to paint to a higher standard than children's books, and do something a little bit more realistic, a little bit more in line with physics and the laws of physics and the laws of scale and camera and proportions. So we bring her back, and I'm going to increase the size of her head, and everything should fall right into place now. So her head can be a bit bigger. Why? Because women are generally shorter than men. And so on average, the female silhouette on a, like, you know, a moderately, you know, not an overweight woman, because her body is still bigger than her than her head. So if you noticed, overweight people, again, you don't gain weight on the scale of the size of your head. You gain weight with your body where you can store fat. And so usually the size lags behind in scale when you're like a 500-pound person. Yeah, that's pretty much all you have to remember. The size of the head is absolutely critical to the read of the character, exactly what kind of character you're drawing and why. So let me just compare only the scale of the head for you. See how tiny it was, right? And then after, right? So it looks a little bit more natural, a little bit more organic, and you know, makes a little bit more sense. As for the environment you chose, because we crushed, so let me give you a quick tutorial on why we crushed the environment, why we scrunched it down, right? That's a word now, scrunched. Let's say you're a bird, and I've covered this before. Let's say you're a bird flying perfectly over a grid. This grid is just perfectly divided. Every single one, imagine every single, obviously they're different sizes, but imagine every single one of these was exactly the same size. All right. All right, so we have two. This bird is flying perfectly over this. So this grid, this grid, this grid, all the same size, all the same place. This is impossible, but let's just say we take this and the bird lands on the ground. What happens is this little phenomenon. Now, all of these grid lines are closer together the further we move away from the horizon. So let me do a bit more resizing. All right, so everybody following? So what I just did was apply perspective. The bird landed on the ground, and now they are, let me put it somewhere you guys can see it right here. And now this part, now we have distance. Now it feels like, whoa, this is all the way over there and this is all the way over here. So if you had the same bird, our little seagull, or, all right, we had the same bird over here, we would barely be able to see that bird. So everything here, for you to make anything on this horizon, on this environment look realistic, you have to start compressing. So this river looked like this in the upward view. Now it looks like this. See how it's more, the curves are more compressed the further in the horizon we go. So same thing here. You have to start compressing these little ridges and flows and water current erosion marks on the side of the pond edge. You have to compress them the further away from the camera we move. All right, so all this stuff here, lines begin. So if you have things that are, let's say you have some poles here, here, and here. This pole is here, this pole is here, and this pole is there. And then if you angle yourself in such a way, one pole will be in front of the other, shrinking indefinitely into the horizon. But we just see circles from bird's eye view. So for this to look realistic, you need to get rid of this super cautious spacing between all of these units, because this is just, again, a noob mistake. Caution is a noob mistake. Write that back to me. So caution in the scale of the head against the edge of the canvas. Caution in this really, really vanilla, not really in there foliage in the painting, because you've never done foliage studies, so you barely know what you're doing. Caution in starting new stuff. Caution in not, just caution is a sign of lack of knowledge. It's not really a sign of lack of confidence. Confidence is a result of knowledge. Caution is the sign, or a big, something I diagnose just out of lack of knowledge. That's what caution comes from, just the unknown. So it's not, oh, have some confidence. Yeah, but how? Having confidence is, or telling someone to have confidence is just bad advice. So to remember this little guy right here, if you're just getting into environments, remember this diagram. It's extremely important because you compressing stuff along the horizon line, this is the missing third dimension. Remember that all of the stuff that's realistic in a painting is fake. It's not real 3D, it's fake 3D. There's a third dimension that's artificial. The first and second dimensions are not artificial because you can go up and down as much as you want and side to side. But in and out of a painting doesn't exist. This isn't a 3D modeling program. So the third dimension is artificial. So you have to fake it. And this little diagram I showed you, that's you faking the third dimension. So let's compress some, let's get rid of this caution here, all this caution tape everywhere, and start compressing some stuff, because I don't really want to change the stuff you picked. Let's say this is a critique hour where I don't have to change, I can't change anything about the painting. So that was something that one of my viewers asked me on Instagram. Have you ever done, I think if I misunderstood the question, I'm sorry, but have you ever done a critique hour where you can't change what the student picked? You just have to improve solely on, you know, the raw science. So let's just say that's exactly what we're doing today. So I've compressed the rock against the placement of the of these little leftover pier pillars. So these things are just, you know, where a pier was, or where they put those little thingies that a boat attaches to. All right, and then I'm just going to throw a simple reflection down this way. All right, so see, just by compressing those two and getting rid of some of that caution scaling, it just looks so natural. It looks like this is all pond related, river related, lake related, man-made little props used in a painting, and everything feels close up. Everything feels a little bit more normal. As for the time of day in the light environment, I think you did well with the light environment. I don't think you picked the best values for the water, and I think you overdid the glow. What happens when you have a character that is in this really intense morning light is you really have to go for it. So now I'm just going to talk a bit about light environment. Caution is a noob mistake, yes. Because it's an unintentional noob mistake. Again, you can't say, I want to have less caution in my art. It's like saying, I want to be, you know, it's like saying I want to be smarter, but making no effort to be smarter. It's not a plausible goal because you don't have any cure for why you can't reach that goal. The cure to caution is knowledge. So, you know, how do you increase knowledge? There's a million ways to increase knowledge. Just by observing. We're observing. We're very smart creatures. We're very smart apes. We can do a lot just by observing. It's like that orangutan. You guys seen that video with the glasses? Orangutan that was playing with the glasses. Did you see how it figured out it's supposed to go on the eyes because it's seen people wear them? Oh my god. I'm so fascinated by this orangutan. They're so amazing. It looked like a scene out of Pixar. Alright. Did you guys see that orangutan? I'll share it on Instagram. Alrighty. I'm just trying to get some of your It looked so good in the glasses, didn't it? It really did. It really did look great. Alright, and so I've just increased the general brightness everywhere for a lot of reasons. You want to create that really strong, heavenly, almost divine glow in her hair. She seems like a hero of some kind. And you want to bring in something to do with her character that is not going to completely silhouette her. So I'm going to saturate her hair before I throw her into an even stronger silhouette. So that must have been another thing you may have been cautious with. So I'm just going to show you. There's really no reward to being excessively cautious in this environment. You know, I'm painting full characters in these really strong scenes with these really dramatic storylines that you can just see right off the character story right here. You can see she's some kind of assassin struggling with her moral compass, right? So I'm just going to make sure the shadow is going through her hair in this way, so only the top of the hair is really catching the light. And by deciding how much light is on her, I'm deciding how much light is in the background. So I'm just going to throw in some more of that. Another reason she looked like a giant was because you're missing that compression here. You can see how it really feels like a giant standing over like the edge of a country. And when you're in that bird's eye view, that compression has gone. Kind of like an edge of a country, like a giant, like a astronomical size. It's because you're just missing these little cues here that make it feel like you know, give me a second. I'm just trying to figure out the hell my brain is asking me to do with this contrast right now. And what we want to do is avoid using any of those cues, or any of those giant cues. All right, so what my brain wants me to do is just have this entire, so let me show you, have this entire area dark. It's as if we're getting the, see that? So we're getting the light, the sun is setting and we're silhouetting the entire foreground. It feels weird not to silhouette the entire foreground. You see what I'm saying? So you could do something like that and just have the light behind her cast really strong. And that means that over here, so I'm trying to do this without rearranging your composition too much. And what we can do over here is just silhouette pretty much everything. I know you want that morning light, but it's going to be really tricky to pull off. Because you have her in a silhouette. Why isn't anything else subject to the same silhouette? Do you see what I'm saying? So I want to silhouette the rest of the painting. And you can see in a second how good that looks. Because you put the sun behind her. And that's just going to have to be what we have here. I personally, if I could, and I will, change where you have placed everything here. So I would put some of this stuff, all this stuff that's happening a little bit closer. Maybe just something that is just nearby the edge of the pond, which should be the norm since this is what boats tie to, so why wouldn't we? The tree is now a little bit closer to the camera, which looks a bit better. And then I'm just gonna clean this up. So scale wise, you did everything look like it was the same size. Okay, Valentina? So Valentina is the artist, right? So the reason why my brain felt this cue to darken everything in the foreground is just because of the subsurface scattering in her hair. This was a silhouette. What's happening in the scene is a silhouette. And then now you can really mess with, oh no, you can really mess with the sky value. So actually let me just do the whole thing, a whole level drop. And feel a little bit better about where you've placed everything. So no atmospheric perspective. If you really have to have atmospheric perspective, oops, let's say you had a little bit more land running out behind her. Okay, so let's say you really had to have some. Then you could use the atmospheric colors, whatever it is, early morning, dewy, humidity, and just give us that distance. Okay, but of course it has to look like it's in the background, so you have to blur, Gaussian blur. It's a bit too much, and you have to stitch it into the environment, so you have to kind of reduce this the contrast along the edge where the water meets the land and all that, and amp up that atmospheric perspective if you can. Obviously, these don't really feel organic. They both come to an equal point. They almost look man-made. But you get my point, right? Is that if you really wanted to increase the size of the land behind her, you do so this way. But as for where you place the hill she's on, the tree she's near, the concept of the pier pillars here for boats, whatever kind of cliff this is, this little duck here, and this tree which should be blurred, all of this stuff is foreground stuff. And then the light is behind her. All right, so this is a complete dissection of the function of these fundamental rules. So before, you had this really confused longness to your environment. We could see the horizon really high. We could see the character is disproportionate in a lot of ways. It's just the size of the head. Everything is equally distant from, almost equally distant from the other prop. This is equally distant. This distance is the same as almost this distance, and this, you're not using any of this stuff to your advantage, and you're not compressing anything. So after, things feel a little bit more natural, and then you could very well just throw whatever you wanted in the background. Let me make it a bit more blue to make sense. Let me just get back. I can't seem to see blue right now. Alright. I'm just throwing in the blue just because it's the color of the sky after all the sunlight. And then finally I'm just going to cast some shadows for those little pier things. And so there's two things that happen on the water. There's the reflection of the object on the water. Remember, the shape has to be cylindrical. Water wraps around the base of something. And then there's the shadow on the surface of the water. And both things ripple. Okay, so that's how you make something look reflective. So I'm just going to emphasize this. And so we've got that shadow responding to the light. And so here, even though the reflection is dark, we still get light where there is no shadow. And this should be more compressed, so like that. Responding there. All right, and then feel free to fix up everything. Honestly, this tree is really, really random. At the end of the day, it is a bad composition simply because you have a character who seems to have a lot of interesting stuff going on in them, but you chose a really barren environment. It almost looks like a Salvador Dali painting. Things seem very abstractly placed together. They don't feel very, like, it doesn't seem like it seems like the dream of a lake rather than an actual lake. You see what I mean? It feels like something you dream about versus something that is real. You just never really see environments that look like this too much. So if it is on the forest edge, have some more trees. Mess around with the tree life here. What the heck is this? Don't be scared to show that it's kind of like on the edge of a forest. So let me make some tree shapes as best as I can. And so now I am changing what the artist did and trying to just show you guys the benefit. Okay. So if you have some tree life behind her, it looks a lot more lush, it looks a lot more alive. If you just get rid of this rock, which seems like such an individual rock, it's in the way of this little water effect here. It's not really doing anything for the environment. It's just a rock that you just wanted to use for some texture. Honestly, it's just in the way. It's not a very interesting rock. If you wanted to show that rocky shoreline, You could do that as well. So I'm just gonna repeat how to make something look like reflective water. So I'm gonna give a basic value for the reflection. Make sure that it's all a cylindrical endpoint here. So select inverse. All right. I'm going to show the tapering of that. So now we get, and now nothing's really in the way of this really pretty water effect. So I'm just going to show how the reflection tapers a bit, and we get to enjoy it. And then we have, before I start rippling that, I'm gonna see if I could pull it off a smudge brush on some kind of little trick here. I know, just give me a second. I have to render every one of these smudges because the canvas is huge now. All right, so big and small brush on soft. Using smudge with 39%, you have some really normal looking still water ripples, and you could just do it, mess with it until you get something that you like, and then select the area. So again, the program I used just now was Portrait Studio, and make sure that you guys pop over to my store because it's on sale at 50% off if you guys like, you know, like feel like you could use it in your paintings. So I go to filter, blur, motion blur, and just blur on 0 degrees. And then again, just blur it till you feel like it's at an effect that you like. And then using soft brush, I'm just gonna grab the color of the object or any dark nearby environment color and cast a shadow off every one of these. You could do it in a new layer if you'd like, because cast shadows have a rule. They're fuzzier the further you get from the object that casts them, and wider. Oops, I didn't do this right. That's why I did it in a separate way. I forgot about this guy. All right, so I'm just going to repeat that process really quickly. All right, really quick, nothing too crazy. And then doing the motion blur, filter, blur, motion blur, because remember, the effects we're doing right now happen in real life. Things get smudged on the water surface, anything reflecting on the water surface, and there is motion on the water. So that's why we do both motion blur and the smudge. We're creating effects that actually happen physically in the real world. Isn't that awesome? So that's usually why I use certain filters and stick to them, like motion blur. I don't try to hand paint that unless, like, you know, obviously if I'm using digital traditional art, I'll hand paint it. But if I don't have to, I'm just going to use a physical render of what actually happens on the surface of the water. And then I get the shadows. I'm going to delete on the edges of the shadows wherever they're closest to the surface or the, you know, the foot of the cylinder, the little piece of wood here. And then I'm going to use my soft brush on eraser and just fuzz out those things, and then I will motion blur the shadows too. So motion blur. All right, and then everything eventually on the surface of the water should get, you know, smudged with the scatter brush. So my number 4 smudge, and the water reflects quite a bit more, so you might end up having more reflection that hides the ripples, just like last minute edits, stuff like that. And sometimes, you know, depending on where you see the water, so the water out there will have a glistening whiteness to it. Actually, I'm tempted now to lower the horizon line even lower. It still feels a bit high, so I might do something like this and just be a little controversial today. All right, so it looks just as normal for it to be lower by this much. Remember how there was a range, an acceptable range for the character to either we're slightly shorter than them or we're at level with them. Okay, and then yeah, I'm just continuing this little rippling. But yeah, sometimes you can have smudge brush on soft brush, super small. Oops, super small. Oh, come on. Okay, and like really high percentage of smudge using shift, and you do real lines of motion. So shift to smudge, don't lift it until you're done. Just on the surface of the water. Don't do too many. It's just a certain amount that you need. And then wherever the water surface reflects back on these cylinders, you're going to throw in that little reflection line. And then for this one, it's along the base of the drum or whatever this thing is that we've now decided. Obviously, it's not the same thing you had. Now it's changed quite a bit. It's like it's from a cliff. It is now, you know, a big landing area or something like that. And I'm just gonna blur the surface here, just because I don't want it too sharp. I don't want it to drag attention away. And I'm just going to create a better surface for these that should, you know, reflect the light pretty evenly. It shouldn't be too difficult to decide on a surface value for them. And if you really want to, you could create a slight depth difference between the stuff in the distance. I'm just going to use that on lighten, and the stuff in the foreground. Doesn't have to be too big a change, but because they're really close proximity to her, I wouldn't overdo it. And I wouldn't do it too much. And now because we lowered the horizon line, that faraway island is now gone. And I usually smudge or blur the horizon line. Never have a sharp horizon line. It makes no sense at all for it to be sharp, because it's a combination of the, you know, objects being more distant in the background, therefore more blurry, and then the light source being bouncing off, creating a bloom, and then of course the atmosphere that's not connecting, but we can see it from, you know, objects in the distance. I am really tempted to throw some dodge tool right here. The water is just too dull at the moment for water that's supposed to be reflecting sunshine. So I feel like water that's really glistening, almost sparkling water, has a little bit of the white of the environment on it, and maybe the sky is what's more blue. Might do you better, leaving the brightest points only for the sunshine. So you could get that really nice blue color. See how much more normal that looks. You know, having the lake itself be white, and then just much stronger values on the lake surface. So really pushing that. Now that we have all of this, we might have to push this a little bit further. You do have a lot of smudge work to do on these little dudes right here. Right, but that's it. So we're just, you see how I'm going through the fundamentals piece by piece. This is a big piece of advice. Like if I die tomorrow, you want to write something on my grave, write this. Because this is what helps me every single day. If you don't know where to start anywhere. And just complete whatever you get to. Just start blindly hacking away at the fundamentals wherever you can see them. Wherever you see them, you know, struggling. And just do what you can with what's in front of you. If you have initiation anxiety, you don't know where to start on fixing something, you're absolutely mortified and kind of weirded out by all the stuff that you have to do that's all brand new and you've never done it before. Start anywhere. And because you're starting anywhere, you're going to fix one thing and another thing is going to be visible after you fix that, and another thing is going to be visible, and slowly it'll start coming together. If you are confused, if you don't know, what fundamentals to work on, if you don't really have the knowledge to know what fundamentals to apply, start being more observant with your movies. Start anywhere. Yes, rest in peace. Start anywhere. But that's it really for today. These are the changes I wanted to show you. You had a confusing little silhouette. You had a confusing light source. Your positions and scale were all off. Your proportions were off, and your canvas was strangely sized. It looked more like a medieval. Do you remember those tapestry, illuminated manuscript kind of tapestry drawings from back in the million years ago? So Google them, look them up. They had no concept of any of these fundamentals. And that's why, those paintings looked a little bit weird, because the canvas was gigantic, the characters' proportions were off, and the horizon line was off, and everything was kind of looked like paper toys or paper cutouts. Back in the day, like 5 years ago, in the 13th century, and after. Other stuff you could do is just showing a little bit more of the fog of the environment. So if it is a morning scene and you want something that looks a little bit more dramatic, and I feel like you need this because it looks a little bit wintry, you could do a fog filter, which is something I want to show you really quickly. So lighten. I think a foggy filter might do well mixed in with that environment, that sunshine, and just showing a little bit of, so I'm kind of wondering how I want to pull this off. So throwing in the bloom first of all. The light is right behind her, so the bloom is going to be over the shoulder. Okay, and just trying to throw in some fog, some of that kind of invisible diffusion. Lighten. Just throwing it over this stuff here. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm kind of just bringing back that mystic feeling to the painting, something that looks a little bit more, less contrast, but we still have the depth in place. So if that's something you feel like you're missing, you have this option as well. One thing about having a character that's this size, perfectly placed in the canvas, the problem with it, so I'm going to merge everything now. The problem with it is that it's really awkward for the viewer. What's more important? Because both are equally sized. So you're going to have to decide what's more important. This type of, you know what, I shouldn't have merged. This type of scale is really dumb in a painting because we don't really get to see the background. And we have this character that's a little bit too big in the canvas and we don't even know what they're doing. And you could, you could darken them and make the background a little bit lighter, etc. But when you have an environment that's this pretty, I think the best option is shrinking the character in the environment. So giving the character some kind of situation in the background and then focusing your attention only on the environment. So this is usually the kind of, this kind of scale. This is how we usually see it used. Character leaning on the tree, the clouds casting like a god ray on the surface of the water. The surface of the water having this really cool haze over it. All right, filter, blur. So let's say there's like a god ray on the surface of the water there, and And it's just floating on, and there's like a boat in the distance, and this character is in the foreground, and you have some more shit happening in the foreground. Maybe her horse is drinking some water while she waits in this nice vista. Where you were before, it's just such an awkward size. Do you see what I'm saying? She's as big as the tree. She's not really as big as the tree. She is as big as the environment, as big as these little poles here. Even if you shrink her just a little bit more, it'll really help the environment and the scale all around. All right, just this, at least this shrinking here. So again, compared to the before, now you can see there's like a nice balance between environment and character. And before, where you had a tile canvas, the character looked like a giant walking over a landscape, and everything was equally spaced, you know, apart, and you had awkward little props and leaves here and there. The sky was early morning sun, but it looked like overcast. So here things make a little bit more sense. Imagine just a bit more foliage, a bit more life to the trees, maybe a nearby boat, maybe her horse is taking a drink or something like that. So you have a nice balance between character and environment. I still really like this filter and this fog. Kind of just shows how the forest may be a little bit darker. One thing I want to do, which would be cool, is to kind of create a canopy of the forest around her. So that would be tricky to pull off because, let me see if I could just photo bash it really quickly. So, right, so you see how there's like a clearing in the forest, and she's just on the edge of the clearing, and she's framed by all this stuff. All right, so unless the story really demands that she be in this really barren looking lakeside, start adding some more forest life. It'll look really cool when you have the character in a silhouette, the forest in a silhouette, and you have this really strong morning sun shining on the character. You know, because she's got red hair, and that's the story of the narrative, of the canvas right now, is that we want to show this warrior's red hair. So that's a perfect place to put the sun. I have a good job on where you put the sun, but the general way you painted everything seems a little bit off. All right. Yeah, if you wanted to have the character forefront, would you do a vertical canvas? Absolutely. So if this was just a character, you know, simple character design, not a simple character design, a simple portrait or book cover, the character is in the foreground, doing her thing. Actually, I do like the filter. So, you know, this is how I would, crop the scene, and I would just leave it like this, some kind of a book cover situation. It's not my favorite type of composition, but if you had to show a little bit more of the character, this is one way to do it. Maybe now she's sitting on a rock against something. Okay, so where you were before, her position before, yeah, it was just an awkward size, and shrinking her so the environment can grow around her is a good idea too. Give me a minute and I'm almost done. So thank you everyone for coming to the live streams. I really appreciate everybody who comes to them. It means the world because it makes for a more class environment, lecture environment where people can ask questions and help customize the class and help shape the class for the ears of a student, because obviously the questions you ask are questions raised by the topic we've discussed, so other people benefit from you guys joining. And yeah, I really appreciate when you guys come to these. But big topic today was scale. That was the biggest topic, and then I would say proportion was the smallest topic. Scale of the background to the character, the ratio. the scale of the wide canvas, because our eyes are beside each other, not on top of each other. And we don't have one eye, we have two eyes, and that's why we like to nod our head or shake our head to see a panorama of our environment. That's why we have a wide canvas. And then the scale of her against the trees, the scale of the ground against the piers, the pillars of the pier, the little thingies, the position of the horizon line behind her, the scale of the clouds behind her, now that we have that light behind her. Maybe it's a bit too much contrast for your taste, but it's good enough for the demonstration. And there's the compression of the stuff in the foreground. This completely needs a paint over, a repaint over, but you could take at least the horizon line position and her size in the canvas and the horizontal canvas into your painting for your corrections. But when are you going to do a 14-day challenge critique? Sorry if you already answered this. I have been meaning to. I will do one very soon. It just depends on what, the theme I want to cover and what I feel like I haven't covered yet in this kind of environment stuff I've been covering lately. All of the topics in relation to scale and depth and all of that I've been covering in the last couple critique hours. I want to get back into portraits. I want to get back into so one of the pieces I wanted to take a look at, let me just give you an example, is this one. So pieces like this are ranging from the 14-day challenge portraits to illustrations of characters. I wanted to get into how to paint a character, maybe for next class or the day after, how to paint a character that looks old but beautiful, and then while keeping the theme. So she looks like a ghostly phantom alchemist, detective, archaeologist, all of those at the same time. And I wanted to just kind of get into how to render it and how to make it look better. So I might get into this theme soon. It doesn't feel like I'm ready because it's about what I feel like teaching. I think that's what I want to do. I want to just keep following what I feel like teaching. And environments have been a recent obsession of mine, so that's something I want to do for a little while longer. But I definitely need to do a 14-day challenge review, kind of like a checkpoint for everyone, congratulate graduates, and kind of help steer them in the right direction. Because some of you guys, though you get critique, still have some issues here and there. But anyway, thank you everyone for joining. I'll see you guys next class, and don't forget to join on Patreon for $1 if you learned something. Today, if you like giving back, you can join for $1. That's $12 a year or less on Patreon. And Portrait Studio is on sale for anyone interested. Thank you guys. Bye.